Welcome to CognitionChunks. This information is for entertainment only. I am not trained in philosophy. Is this useful? Is this nonsense? Join me as I attempt to learn from GPT. Here is Eureka! Epics. Understanding the Origins of Philosophy by GPT. Part 1. The Cradle of Philosophy. Chapter 2. Eastern Philosophies and Their Origins. Section B. The Development of Buddhism and Jainism. The development of Buddhism and Jainism represents a significant period in the history of Indian religious and philosophical thought. Emerging around the 6th century BCE during the so-called Second Urbanization of India, these traditions offered new spiritual paths that diverged from the prevailing Vedic and Brahmanical practices, emphasizing personal ethics, renunciation, and the pursuit of liberation. Buddhism. Historical context. Founded by Siddhartha Gautama, later known as the Buddha, the Enlightened One, Buddhism arose as a reformative movement challenging the ritualistic and hierarchical structure of Vedic religion. Siddhartha's enlightenment under the Bodhi tree marked the beginning of Buddhism. Four Noble Truths. The core teachings of Buddhism are encapsulated in the Four Noble Truths, which diagnose the human condition as characterized by suffering, dukkha, identify its cause and desires, tanha, prescribe the cessation of suffering, nirodha, and outline the path to cessation through the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path. This path includes right understanding, right intent, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, guiding adherence toward ethical living, mental discipline, and wisdom. Anatta and anicca. Buddhism introduces the doctrines of anatta, non-self, and anicca, impermanence, challenging the notion of a permanent soul and the permanence of the world, respectively. These principles underpin the Buddhist path to enlightenment, emphasizing detachment from the ego and the transient nature of the world. Nirvana. The ultimate goal in Buddhism is achieving nirvana, a state of liberation and freedom from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth samsara. Nirvana is characterized by the cessation of desires and suffering, leading to a state of peace and liberation. Spread in diversity. Buddhism spread from India to various parts of Asia, evolving into a multitude of traditions and schools, including Theravada, the doctrine of the elders in Southeast Asia, and Mahayana, the great vehicle in East Asia, each with its own interpretations and practices. Jainism. Historical background. Jainism is believed to have been founded in the same cultural milieu as Buddhism, with Mahavira, the great hero, also known as Vardhamana, being its most prominent teacher. However, Jain tradition holds that Mahavira was the last of 24 Tirthankaras, spiritual teachers, suggesting an even older origin. Ahimsa and asceticism. Central to Jainism is the principle of ahimsa, nonviolence, which is applied rigorously to all living beings. This principle underlies Jain ethical conduct, dietary restrictions, and the ascetic lifestyle, aiming to minimize harm and karmic accumulation. Karma and liberation. Jainism presents a detailed cosmology and philosophy of karma, emphasizing the soul's entanglement in the cycle of birth and rebirth due to karmic particles that accumulate through harmful actions. Liberation, moksha, is achieved through the purification of the soul and the shedding of karmic bonds, primarily through ascetic practices and ethical living. Sayadvada and Anakanavada. Jain epistemology introduces the doctrines of Sayadvada, the theory of conditioned predication, and Anakanavada, the doctrine of non-absolutism, advocating for the complexity of truth and the relativity of viewpoints. These principles promote tolerance and the acknowledgement of multiple perspectives. Community and practices. The Jain community is divided into two major sects: Digambara, sky-clad, which practices more severe asceticism, and Svetambara, white-clad, which allows for less austere practices. Both sects emphasize the importance of community, ethical conduct, and rituals in the pursuit of liberation. Conclusion. Buddhism and Jainism significantly impacted the spiritual, cultural, and philosophical landscape of India and beyond. Both traditions, with their emphasis on personal responsibility, ethical conduct, and the pursuit of liberation, offered paths to spiritual fulfillment that stood in contrast to the ritualistic and caste-based practices of the time. Their rich philosophical contributions continue to inspire and guide followers worldwide, highlighting the enduring relevance of their teachings in addressing the fundamental questions of suffering, existence, and liberation. Thank you for joining us for another Cognition Chunks. Please like and subscribe.